Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do a video response because my friend James over at Elite Hunters is doing a video response contest at the moment. So here is my submission to his, "Hey Saul, this is why I love collecting vintage cards." All right, so I wrote down a few reasons why I like to collect vintage cards. I'm going to start with just being able to have a deeper connection with my father and some of the players he talked about during his youth. So obviously, I mentioned on the channel before, he is a St. Louis Cardinal fan through and through. He doesn't mind the White Sox, but I think Cardinals are always going to be his #1 team. And these are players he just talked about throughout my childhood and into my adulthood as well. From his favorite player being obviously Stan the Man Musial to obviously the exploits of the Cardinals teams in the 1960s led by Lou Brock and Bob Gibson. So that was one of the reasons I collect vintage. Don't have a lot of cards from the 60s that are not already in binders for sets, but those are a few I have that I could share with you. And then obviously it's connecting with my favorite team, the Chicago White Sox, and looking at some of their great teams through the history. So even just starting with the Hitless Wonders and the players that were kind of associated with this team. I don't think Parent was, but he's just kind of throwing it in there for good measure. But the last two players, Tannehill, Jones, and obviously Ed Walsh in the back here were part of the 1906 Hitless Wonder White Sox that won their very first Teams World Series. Here's some beautiful T206 tobacco cards to capture that great team. Then we went to the team that won the 17 World Series, but then through the 1919 World Series. So a lot of the same players do overlap. I'm going to show you some of the clean Sox in this team. So we got Urban Faber, who was part of those teams, but was not available during the 1919 World Series due to injury. He's in the Hall of Fame. We got Red Schalk, who actually did play in both World Series. He was the catcher and cleared of any wrongdoing. And Eddie Collins, who was not part of the 17 team, but he was on the 1919 team. He's actually spent more years with the White Sox than he did with the Philadelphia Athletics. But he's going to be known more for the Athletics because I think he had greater exploits with winning the World Series as opposed to the White Sox, where he's on some really bad teams once the team was gutted as a result of 8 players being suspended for life. And then there wasn't a lot of history for the White Sox, I guess, that was really super positive, at least associated winning until we got to the 1950s. So here's some of the good players from the Go-Go Sox era that did appear in one World Series in 1959 and lost to the Los Angeles Dodgers, which was the Los Angeles Dodgers' first World Series, but not the first in their history. Here's like the big three that people probably remember the most from this team. You got Minnie Minoso, you got Luis Aparicio, and you got Nellie Fox. So here's some cards from that era that kind of captured that team. I also like being able to collect the players from this era, not just the superstars, but some of the players that have great stories associated with them, either personal stories of perseverance like Sam Rice, or the guy who hit the shot heard around the world, Bobby Thompson, or even to the shame of Hal Chase, who was one of the players who actually got suspended after the first 8 men from the 1919 Sox were suspended. He was later suspended when they looked into sort of his wrongdoing over the course of a decade and a half in Major League Baseball with throwing games, and also in his his case of why he was kind of tossed out for life because he had knowledge of the fixing of the 1919 World Series and didn't say anything. So you got Hal Chase of the New York Highlanders and the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago White Sox at that time. And obviously, one of the reasons I love collecting vintage is just kind of some of the great card designs that just modern cards have a hard time being able to come close to because it doesn't really capture the printing limitations they had of the era and just the creativity that they did to be able to achieve it. So here's a 34 Gowdy Haffey, which actually I like the 34 set a little bit better than the 33 set. But obviously you're probably picking between your best children when you're kind of having that kind of conversation. And obviously my lovely Diamond Star sets from the 34 to 36. I was super excited to be able to get this Luke Appling card in particular. It's actually my favorite Appling card. And then just a beautiful 52 set. I'll throw that in there because that's obviously the set that probably from my childhood onward was kind of talked about as like the set to collect, probably because of the Mantle card and the Maze at the time, and still is to this day the reasons why people gravitate towards this set. And here we have a lovely card of Billy Pierce of the Chicago White Sox here, who is their best pitcher during that era. And I also collect because I think of certain collectors that are in the hobby that I've kind of become friends with over the years, or people who are my friends that have given me some really nice gifts. So you just being able to kind of befriend Alex over at Bowman 53. Can't help but think about him without thinking of the beautiful 53 Bowman set. Here's Roy Campanella, who's one of my favorite players from this era. Then lovely gifts that I got from my good friend Ravi. This is like one of the highlights of Bill Mazeroski card that's in a PSA 8 from the 59 set. And then obviously doing videos with RJ and Jake. And the first one, I think we really kind of tackled, actually the second one was talking about the 67 set as we were both working on it at that time. So here's my quote unquote flex, if you will, by pulling out the Tom Seaver rookie card, which is the high series and probably the most, and it is the most expensive card within this set. All right, and the final reason I collect vintage is I just like being able to see all the cards together from a certain sets or certain season. And I'm going to pull out my binder here to show you the very first one I put together. So I got to move these out of the way to create a little bit of space. It's going to be hard to see just on the camera here. So I'll just kind of do my best to kind of share this with you. I think I can pull it out just a little bit too. Well, that actually makes it closer, so that's not going to work. There you go. So this is actually let me take these down too so I don't knock these over. That would be heartbreaking if either one of those got cracked, but especially the Walsh. So this is actually the 53 binder that I put together back in the day. I actually put it in my little Score 88 binder, which was, I think, something you could mail in for at the time was that binder in 88. But I took it because it fit the 73 set perfectly. So here's my 73 set, the very first vintage set I put together. Some of my favorite cards in the set are going to be like the Clemente. I love that card. This first card right here, the very first card in the set, which features a little hard to capture it right now, but it's got the home run leaders, all-time home run leaders at the time in 1973, which was Ruth, Aaron, and Mays. On there, obviously, they replicated that with the Heritage set, but just some all-time great players that are in here. Willie Mays is in here with the Mets, which I just love that image of him smiling in the set. Nolan Ryan. Yeah, just a lot of great players and images in here, and this really cool image, obviously, of Johnny Bench fielding a foul ball with his back to the camera, which is pretty neat. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And James, good luck with your contest. Thank you for doing this.